Okay, so an overview of today's webinar. I'm going to talk about what is digital asset management, or DAM. And of course, I think if any of you were at the Southeast District Secretary meeting, you heard me talk about DAM folders. That's a real thing, digital asset management. And Robbie likes to make jokes about that, so you know it's possible he might cut in with a good joke about DAM folders. Then we're going to talk about DAM practices that include hierarchy, file naming conventions, and file optimization. And then at the end, we'll open up the floor for questions and discussion. So what is digital asset management? It is the management, organization, and distribution of digital assets like images and document files from a central content hub. Adobe Experience Manager, or AEM, digital asset management is a feature-packed capability that allows you to centralize and index all of your content, process metadata, and much more. And so basically what that means for you for your county websites, you can employ and use some best practices like hierarchy, which is basically folders, using folders. You can utilize file naming conventions, and I meant to take metadata off of there because we really don't have metadata the way other DAM systems do, but I can show you some things in AEM that do sort of apply. So best DAM practices, you should use hierarchy, and basically that means that folders are made up of parent and child relationships between your naming conventions and the files inside those folders. So basically the way we have the county websites, the folders, the asset folders set up are that you have your parent folder, which is the county, has the county name, the county office name. And then inside there, we have folders for images and documents that are for the main site. And then each program area has their own folder, which is technically a child, but would be a parent for any images or documents that you use under that particular program area. And the AEM DAM system allows you to customize the folders for your specific needs. You can name them however you like. You can nest them. You can, you pretty much have free reign to set up your own system. One thing that we've already done, like I mentioned, and that is a good rule of thumb, is to create an empty group of folders and subfolders as a template, so that if you know that you're going to use registration forms and have a lot of those that need to be changed out a lot and you need to keep them organized, you would go ahead and create that empty folder so that you, or if you're working with anyone else in your office who's also doing work on the website, so that you know exactly where things are in your site. So the subfolder would be registration forms within the documents folder under 4H. And so that's just a suggestion. And we do already have some of that set up for you. Some things about hierarchy: don't overthink it. If you have to stop and think about what you should name a folder, then it's not efficient, because if you have to stop and think about it, then everyone else will. So just try to be simple and and general, general enough that it's easy to recognize if someone was looking at your files and folders. And then pick a hierarchy. So pick a direction that you want to go. Set up your templates, your blank template, empty template folders, and then stick to that. Let everybody know in your office, anybody that you're working with on the website, know that, hey, all of these documents go here, all of the images go here in this folder, and that makes it a lot easier for you when you've got to change out documents, update them, or if you want to keep your image content fresh, then it's a lot easier to find and replace or delete files. Avoid redundancy. You don't have to have multiple copies of the same file because of the way you link to files within the site. You don't have to upload a file every single time you want to link to it. And plus that takes up a lot of space if you have multiples of multiples and lots of copies of things floating around. Some file naming conventions. Try to include important information in the file name. So make it descriptive, but also, you know, keep it short so that that it's easy to read, and just at a glance you can tell what that file is or what that image is. Also, abbreviations that are indecipherable or unclear, stay away from those if you can. It's also a very common practice, and I do a lot, is to use an event name and a date and a numerical sequence to name files. So your county 4-H camp 2018 001 002, you know, with that, so that you know exactly when and where that was. And then again, with the hierarchy, put it in a folder that makes sense. Also, with file naming conventions, use the extensions that are appropriate for the file type, even on Mac OS X. Sometimes if you are using files that are downloadable, PDFs, registration forms, that kind of thing, you don't know what your users are using, so be sure to leave the file extension on there, JPG for images, but more specifically PDF for all of those documents that some of your users might be downloading. Don't remove the file extension. Also, don't use punctuation or special characters in the file names. The systems get really confused by that. We've had some problems with that here recently, and then we had a bug that had to be fixed. And so if you can, stay away from things like using question marks, periods, any brackets or slashes, equal, plus, greater than, less than, apostrophes. I'll stay away from using apostrophes. I think we've had 1 or 2 files that might have had that in there. The colon, the semicolon, and quotation marks. All of those are, or a lot of those are not only punctuation marks, but in programming languages, they are, like for instance, the colon designates a directory. So do the slashes. So I know that sometimes when I'm doing demonstrations or for trainings, I will do things like this in order to show you what will happen. And basically what does happen is the AEM won't find the file because it it doesn't recognize those characters as something that should be in a file name. So also avoid using spaces in file names. It's the same thing, same kind of thing. I've run. Hello? How much did you miss? Hello?
Hey, Melissa. Can you hear me? Melissa?
Sorry about that. I think I might have bumped my mute button while I was talking. Okay, most of the last part about the spaces in the file name. Thank you, Mary Beth. So the characters and spaces in file names, avoid them. I do purposefully use spaces in file names for PDFs when I'm doing training so that you can see what happens when you leave spaces or use special characters in the file names. AEM doesn't recognize those as things that should be in the file name, and so it doesn't recognize that there is actually a document. So when you create a link, it looks like a link, but when you go back to test it or you go back to it later, the link doesn't work. It doesn't actually turn into a hand, like it's not clickable anymore. So the best way to avoid that problem is to avoid using spaces. And you can use dashes in between the words or remove the spaces and run the words together. One thing that I like to do, and I actually learned this from way back in the day when I learned how to program an action script. What I do is I capitalize the first letter of each word. And that's how I separate the words and not use spaces at all. And just plain dashes, of course, are okay too. File optimization. We want to, besides having everything organized, we also want to have them small and lean so it doesn't take so long for them to load, for you to be able to find them, but also for your users to be able to look at your website and find what they want and be able to download things quickly. So if you remember, compression, especially with images, is removing hidden data in the image file to reduce the file size of images. And image compression apps like Tiny JPG is a quick and easy way to reduce the file size without losing any image quality. And then if you're if you've got documents, Adobe Acrobat Pro, or I think actually now it is Acrobat DC or something like that, is the newest Creative Cloud version of Acrobat, and PowerPoint, and there are a few online apps here and there, are a quick and easy way to reduce the file size of documents. And basically what they do is the same thing. They remove hidden data, but they remove that from the images. So if you have a PDF that's got a lot of images in it, it's going to be pretty big. And so, and PowerPoint does the same thing. It just compresses those images so that you have a leaner document. And I'll show you an example of that, although the file that I have isn't really huge to begin with, but it'll work for showing you how to compress those. Here's the link again to Tiny JPG for any images that you want to compress and optimize. Now, if you don't have Adobe Acrobat installed on your computer, you can contact your field rep. And the link next to that is actually a link to the PDF map that shows you who is your field service rep for your county. And it also has their contact information. Now, before I go to the discussion and questions, I am going to I didn't do that one. Sorry, I'm working with two screens here. All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to do this first. And yes, Mary Beth, I will be sending this when I finalize the session. I will send this PowerPoint as an attachment. And probably in the next week or so, I should have the archives ready to go. All right, so I've already logged into AEM, and I'm already here at the assets. So we're going to go ahead to our folder. And here's the hierarchy that we already, the template hierarchy that we already have set up for you. And you see each of the program areas has their own folder, and then the images and documents that are for the general site. And then within each of these, we should have a documents and images folder. If you don't already have that, or if you decide that's not how you want your hierarchy to function, you can create new folders by clicking this Create Folder button. If you decide you don't want the images and documents that we set up in order to delete folders, you're going to click this little check sign, and you'll see that that turns into an X, and that means you're in selection mode. So when you click on a folder, it's going to select it. It's not going to open it. You won't be able to see what's inside, but you can delete it from there. And then to undelete, of course, to unselect, you just click it again and do the same thing. And I'm not going to delete that folder. I'm just going to keep it there. When you're done with selection mode and you want to be able to go in and look at the folders, look at the images and documents within the folder, I'm just going to click that X. If you notice that you can't get into folders, that's the first place you want to check and make sure that there's a check mark there and not an X. If there is an X mark there, that means that you're in selection mode, so you'll need to click it again until it goes back to the check mark. Here is another sort of hierarchy. Under images on the main site, I have some folders already set up. These are for the slider. So these are called, so this folder is called slides. And since I'm just doing a demo for you, I basically just called it slide and then gave it a number. You can give it, you set up your own naming convention however you like. Now, if you hover over the picture, you can click on this third button over, and to view the properties. And then here is where you're going to see the metadata, like the image type. It's an image and it's a JPEG, which you can also see here in the file name. You can see when it was created, and you can see the size. And you can also see what tool created it. I happen to do those in Photoshop, so it is telling me that. This column here, there's nothing there right now because I am not using that particular image, but if you go back out here and you see this little image with the chain and the number, that is telling you that this image is linked on a page somewhere. So if we click on View Properties, again, we've got the image type created. This one I did with Canva, and I also optimized it so it stripped the information, the metadata out about Photoshop. Number one, I didn't use Photoshop, but number two, I optimized this photo so it's just got the bare minimum information here. And here, this column I was telling you about, referenced by, and then there's a link to the page where you can find that. So if we were to go into selection mode, you can do multiple selections and do multiple things with them. Basically, this is a good way to bulk delete. So since those are not referenced anywhere, I'm just going to select them and delete them. And it's going to ask you, do you want to delete all of those? And I am going to say yes. And it deletes them. Now, if I try to delete this one, it should tell me that it's referenced somewhere. And it's not going to let me delete it. So if you do happen to have a photo or a document that's still in your site and you accidentally select it for deletion, it's not going to let you. You can force delete it, and that's going to ignore the fact that there's a link on your page that will now be a broken link. Or you can just cancel and say, oh, I want to leave it there. And then if we go back to some documents, it's the same principle. I've got a training PDF, so I created the folder that that is pretty simple, training PDF. Inside there, that one's not got a very good naming convention. I didn't stick to my own naming convention, and that's mainly because I just grabbed any PDF off of my desktop to be able to upload it. So, but I would probably change that name. You can see this was created in Microsoft Word, and there are no references. So it is not linked anywhere. So we could delete that and get rid of it if it's not necessary. And in this case, it's not. And here, advanced will tell you some other information, but it's usually not anything that's pertinent. The main information that you're going to need is probably the creation date. Probably take a look at the year. I mean, if it's really old and needs to be updated, that would be important. And then most importantly, whether it's referenced on your website or not. And since that is not referenced, I can enter selection mode, click on it, and delete. I should probably mention also that you should probably have some, since you are most likely uploading these from your desktop, you should have a backup copy somewhere, just in case something gets deleted, accidentally deleted from your website, any documents or images or whatever. Now, what I'm going to do here is open up an old PowerPoint that actually has some images in it. So if you've got a PowerPoint that's pretty big that you want to be able to share on your website, the first thing you're going to do is go to any slide that has an image on it. You're going to click on that image. And unfortunately for me, I have a zoom toolbar exactly where I need to click. So I need to move this down a little bit. Okay, so I've got the image selected. And here under Format and Picture Tools, we're going to click on Picture Tools. And you see this bar opens up. And we're going to select Compress Pictures. And before I do that, I want to go here to the desktop, hover over this. There we go. It's 5.62 megabytes. So let's go back here and I'm going to compress pictures. Apply only to this picture. I want it to apply to everything. So I'm going to uncheck that box. Delete cropped areas of pictures. If you happen to crop in PowerPoint, that's a good thing to keep checked. So we're going to keep that checked. You can use the document resolution, or if you want to compress it down even more, you could select web. 150 ppi for viewing on a screen is enough resolution to look on the web, and it's also good for projectors. So that's a good one to choose. And then we're going to say OK. And it doesn't take long, so I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go back over here, and it still says the same thing. Let's do Save As. Actually, go to Info. There were only 2 pictures to begin with, so it went from 5.86 to 5.11. We really don't recommend sharing PowerPoints on your websites. So another option that you can do, and the preferred mode of sharing PowerPoints, is save as an Adobe Pdf. So if you click on that, I've already got one saved, but so I will add the number 2 there and save. And it's going to publish as a PDF. And I'm going to go to the desktop. And here's the number 2 file that I just created. And it went from 5.1 megabytes to 282 kilobytes. If it goes that far down, that's probably all right. However, if you are in Adobe Acrobat, you can compress it even more. Or if you've got a PDF that you're starting with, you can optimize that as well. So what you're going to want to do is open it in Adobe Acrobat. Adobe Acrobat Pro DC. I think on the desktop, it looks like that, Adobe Acrobat DC. When you first open it up, unless you open the PDF directly, you should be on the home page where you can see different documents that you've opened recently. You can also find documents in the cloud, Creative Cloud, on your computer. I'm going to click Browse, Desktop. And these are already open, so I'm not going to do anything else. Here, if you click, you have Home, and that's where we are right now. Here, if you click this tab and go to Tools, this is a list of tools that show up here on the right-hand side. Optimized PDF is what you want. It is not there by default. So you're going to scroll down under Protect and Standardize, and you're going to click on this drop-down menu, and let me show you here. It'll say Add Shortcut, and that'll add the shortcut over here so that you can get to it there. You could also just click on Open from here if you don't want the shortcut over here. But if you do have the shortcut over there, while you're working on a PDF, you can just click on Optimize PDF. Sorry. Optimize PDF, reduce file size. That's what size is usually what we want. Since we just want to make this small enough for the web, that's good enough. If you have to have these printed for some reason, some PDF printed, you can do pre-flight. Basically, that makes sure that all your fonts are okay and that all of your images are all right for use. Advanced optimization. If we click on that, you have all of these different options that you can choose and different numbers. If you know what you're doing and need something specific, you could do that, but otherwise we really just want to reduce the file size. And so we're going to click on that, make compatible with, and that's with the different versions of Acrobat and Acrobat Reader. We can just retain an existing, that's fine. You can apply to multiple files. So you can add files here. And when all the documents are there, you're just going to click OK. Target folder, the same folder selected at start, or if you want to save it to a specific folder on your computer. So here I would go ahead and on my desktop, make a new folder. Optimize PDFs. Hit enter. And you can see the blue, that means that that's what's selected. And we're going to say okay. You can keep the original file names, or you can insert a prefix or a suffix. Sorry, for a second I couldn't remember the word suffix. At the end, I'm just going to keep the original file names right now. Since I have those, going to have those in a separate folder. So I'm just going to say okay. Override existing files. If they were not going to a separate folder, then it would overwrite what the the files that are already on there. Since it's not going to the same place, I'm just going to go ahead and uncheck that. So we'll keep the original high resolution large files, although these are not very large because they've already been compressed from the PowerPoints. So, and I'm going to say OK. It wants you to enter a prefix or suffix, and that is probably because I took that off. I'm just going to put the word optimized afterwards. Conversion warnings. The PDF document contained image masks that were not downsampled. We'll see if that makes a big difference. Basically what that's telling you is there were parts of this particular PDF that could not be compressed. If the file size is still really huge, then that's something that we would have to play with, and considering it's image masks, I would say it's probably in the background photo, but I don't know. If the image is still very large, I would take it back into PowerPoint and remove the background and maybe just put a plain black background. And then I'm going to say OK. And here is the Web Image Gallery optimized PDF. If I had put a dash before the word optimized or capitalized the O, of course that would show up there, but I just put the word optimized, so that's why it's all running together. So now it's 291K, and before it was 333. So there was a little bit of compression going on there, not a lot. Again, I did not have a lot of images in that particular PowerPoint, so there was not a lot of compression that needed to happen. Are there any questions, comments? This is actually going to be a short one today. I know I've past few I've been like, these are going to be short ones, and then we ended up going the full hour or for an hour and you know, plus.
This was a short damn webinar.
If there are not any questions or, you know, any discussions or anything, you guys are dismissed. We're going to hang out here for a few minutes, so if you you know, think of anything or have questions about anything else, you can let us know. Thank you all for coming today and being so attentive.